A few months ago, I posted a video that asked the question, why does it seem there are fewer keyboard players out there in the music scene?
Is being a keyboard player a dying art?
That video actually didn't get a lot of views, but proportionally it did get a lot of really thoughtful comments from you guys, which I thought were really good, and so I'm going to share a couple of those here. For example, Jason commented that it seems fewer and fewer people getting into music in a gigging band situation are playing keys. In my area, central Mississippi, the keyboardist pool is pretty shallow. My experience also still is that the demand for keyboard players is greater than the supply. Here's what Web Nomad has to say. One thing I have never been able to find: cover band keyboard player lead sheets. Like a fake book, but instead of having chords and melody, it would have the chords and then the typical lines that a keyboard player would play in a cover band. Have you ever seen anything like this, or do you agree that it would be useful for new players? And yes, I agree 100% that there is a need for this and that it would be absolutely useful for new players. Heck, even for old players like me, because I still need to learn new songs. In fact, it is this lack of material that caused me to make some of the tutorial videos that you can find on my channel right now, like the one on how to play the keyboard part of Working for the Weekend by Loverboy. I had to learn the song for my band anyway, so I figured I might as well put it on a tutorial and help someone else who could use it. And as it turns out, many of you have, and even downloaded my transcription. But for any number of reasons that I might guess, the availability of these kinds of resources for keyboard players is just about zero, especially when you compare it to the overabundance of guitar tutorials, videos, and books available to help a guitarist learn just about any song out there. I also play guitar, and these kinds of resources have been available for decades. I know this because I used to subscribe to those magazines back in the 80s, which is how I learned how to play a lot of songs on guitar way back in the day. But for band keyboard players, even today with the internet, there's still not much available. On my website, I received this comment from Dan, who noticed the same thing. If you look at and compare with the guitarist community, players have easier access to a lot more accessible resources and information, such as being able to search for and find more tutorial videos, cover videos, and almost any tab or tablature for songs out there. Easy access to transcriptions and resources for the piano and any other instruments for that matter are not as extensive, or they are non-existent. And if and when they do exist, I usually find them inaccurate or way off from the original. I was hoping that the keyboard community would be as large by now. Unfortunately, we've been relegated to product review videos and Synthesia type how-to play videos for the most part. Even though these videos can be helpful and useful, I think and feel they are not enough to get working and potentially aspiring keyboard players excited or motivated. So yes, and yes, Dan, I couldn't have said this better myself. And I want to speak more about the phrase that you used in there, keyboard community, because I think there's something to think about there, but I'll get back to that in just a second. Now, this comment came from Mark, and he brings up even more good points about why there might be a shortage of keyboard players. I think keyboard is the hardest instrument to play in a band because there are so few resources to learn how to do it. There are a ton of resources for guitar and bass. Most of the resources out there for keyboard are piano sheet music, which is mainly for playing solo piano covers where you play the vocal melody on piano, or a general accompaniment that combines the guitar and bass parts arranged for piano. I wish there were more resources for teaching how to play actual keyboard parts, such as synths, electric pianos, organs, clavinet, in an actual band setting. In many cases, the only way to get this is getting the multi-tracks for songs and working out the keyboard parts. But oftentimes, there are a ton of dubbed parts and layers that are just impossible to play live, so you have to pick and choose. Not only that, but it can get expensive buying multi-tracks. You're, speaking of me, one of the few people showing how to play keyboards in a cover band, which is awesome. First, Mark, thank you for the compliment. I do appreciate it. I'm doing my best to help in some small way. But yes, to all those other things you mentioned, the sheet music you can find online is just about always not what you need when you are playing with a band. And yes, complicating this further is that a lot of modern music has many layers of keyboard and synth parts. that even if you were a competent musical keyboard player, you could not possibly play them all at the same time by yourself. Okay, so to summarize all these comments, I believe, and I am also hearing back from you, that there are a lot of obstacles for keyboard players, and one of the biggest ones is that there is a clear lack of accurate or helpful resources for keyboard players to learn how to play in the context of a band. Now, the funny thing is, it's not like piano is an unpopular instrument. In fact, I just checked this, and it is still the most popular instrument that people want to learn how to play. And there are tons and tons of online piano courses and real piano teachers out there, and millions of people taking piano lessons. But still, there remains a massive disconnect between the way people are learning to play piano or keyboard and then what skills are actually needed for someone to play keyboard in a band. This disconnect has been really obvious to me for a long time because I have been in the band world, I've been in the church world, and I've been in the academic world as a student and as a teacher, in lessons and in college. At times I've wondered if I'm the only person that can see this gap between these two worlds. So I do greatly appreciate comments that are assuring me that I'm not crazy in seeing this. By the way, if you're enjoying this conversation about keyboard musicianship, please do me a favor and like the video so it can get to others like yourself, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss my upcoming videos. So now that we've established that lack of resources is a real problem for band keyboard players, the question I now have is, can we do something about it? My first thought, I guess off the top of my head, is can't we just publish a book or a website that has all this information? To me, that seems like the most obvious solution, but I also realize that that's probably too simplistic of a solution, because you do have all these real problems with copyright permissions and being able to sell this material, and that there are just too many songs to include and they're constantly changing. And plus the added problem of how do you help a person find the right keyboard tones for all these songs? Not to mention that for a big publisher to want to invest in such a project, they would want to be assured of a decent market share and some good profit. And since keyboards just simply have a smaller following than guitars these days, I don't see where a big publisher will want to even take on such a project. So although that seems like a great idea at first, I actually don't think it's realistic. But I could be wrong. Let me know if you see it differently. But I do have a different idea that I'd like to get your opinion on, and I'm going to revisit that phrase that Dan used in his comment before, keyboard community. I do believe that with the collective wisdom and experience of the keyboard community, there is an abundance of resources that can be accessed to help everyone who is looking for it. So here's my thought. What if all of us working or aspiring keyboardists had a dedicated place to ask questions and share what we've learned with each other? Like if you wanted to know how to play the keyboard part for a certain song and you were part of a community of other keyboard players that you could go to see if someone else maybe could share a playthrough video of how they play it, or maybe pass along their cheat sheet or offer some tips on tones or sounds. Or if you have a question about the chord progression or the key of a certain song, or maybe a question about how to manage a tricky gig situation, or how to connect your keyboard up to a sound system. How does that work? Or any of the other things that a working keyboard player might need to deal with. And I'm asking this as a real question. This is not just a thought experiment. It's something that I would actually like to open up. A functioning community of keyboard players of all different genres and experience levels, from beginner to professional, all learning from each other and contributing to the whole. What do you think? Pros, cons, alternatives, whatever. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you again soon.